welcomed, like there's almost like a lounge at the airport. I wasn't like expecting that for a visa on arrival, so kudos to the government. It took like literally 10 minutes to go through the process, and there was a big set of posters saying don't give bribes, help us. So I felt it was like really good, and I think it just makes you feel good coming and just going through. So the visa on arrival and all that sort of immigration sort of process is really good. I was in Rwanda in May, and I was sort of traveling to the border with DRC with a drive, and then we got stopped by security just in the middle of literally nowhere. And then the policeman came with a mobile device and literally punched a couple of numbers, I think the license plate, and then prints out a ticket and tells the driver that you haven't paid a ticket that you were supposed to pay a couple of months ago, and this is the amount. I was like shocked. And it's like, okay, you need to just go back to Kigali at some point and make the payment. It was, mobile infrastructure. They had all of the information, so pretty good. And I was in Cote d'Ivoire also a couple of years ago. I was able to go through the passport security using my Mauritanian passport. I saw like an e-gate where you can literally just scan your passport, opens, and it gets in. And I was just impressed. So there have been examples, and I think digitalization is critical. It's actually need to go more, and we need to do more of it because the transparency is just amazing. That's what's going to make our government efficient, going to make our healthcare efficient, education efficient. All of the sectors will be way more efficient for digitization, from digitization. So this is what I'm going to go back to infrastructure. And it's really critical. To be able to do this, there is massive infrastructure that need to be put on the ground. And our ask from Facebook in general is just sort of government policymakers to make it easy for people to invest in infrastructure, because that infrastructure is Africa's infrastructure is going to be here. No one's going to rip it from the ground. And it's important to facilitate that because that's what's going to put Africa really at the forefront of advancement, digitization, and growth. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I wanted to make sure that this is sort of a broader than just maybe one sector.
Yes, I think you gave us some really good examples there, so thank you for that. I'm just really going to quickly go on to Carolina from Hack for Sweden. Get your questions ready. We're going to start taking questions in a minute. And I'm just asking Carolina to just give us some thoughts on how digitization can have transformative effects outside of the startup technology ecosystem. Because it seems like when we talk about digitalization, we're just talking about tech startups. I know that's what you do at Hack for Sweden, but let's have your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Hack for Sweden is a government mission, raised to increase the awareness, but also the use of open data. And in Sweden, we have a lot of open data, and we also have around 6 sectors that are the most data-matured sectors. And with digitalization, it comes a lot of possibilities. And what we have to do to develop Sweden and also create a Sweden that we all want to live in tomorrow, like a Sweden 4.0, we have to use the possibilities with the digitalization and also use the great amount of open data that we have. But we can't only rely on the government to do this. What we are doing and what Hack for Sweden is doing is that we are a platform for citizen-driven innovation where we invite all parts of the innovation ecosystem, which means we are inviting both the public sector, the private sector, the academia, and also the citizens to be part in creating the solutions that we need to have in place. I mean, if you look at the world today, we are facing a lot of problems. And these problems or challenges, they are also visible in Sweden. Maybe not in the same way like in the rest of the world or some part of the world, but we can see the effect of them. And the thing that we need to do is to find solutions to them. And by inviting the citizens to be part of this, we aim to do that. And I think we have come quite far when it comes to how the government agencies and the public sector can work together to do that. And I mean, Hack for Sweden, you can probably hear from the name that it has something to do with a hackathon, and that's right. So we have a yearly hackathon where we aim to create solutions, and I would say solutions to real challenges. And the reason for why I'm saying real challenges is because these challenges are defined by the whole innovation ecosystem, both the public sector and the private sector, because they are part of our partner community and also the citizens. So in that perspective, of course, this is not only a startup thing for tech companies to solve. It's also something that we need to work on together.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you for that. I was just going to go to Kristen. Yes, if you'd like to give us your thoughts on public and private sector participation in digitalization.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a privilege to be here. And I definitely agree with the Mr. Facebook of your thoughts about this country, hospitality. But also, someone said that the value of a company is the sum of the problems that you're able to solve. And I would say that in this room and during this conference, at least for me, it has inspired me to think in that way, that we have a lot of challenges and a lot of problems, but we also have the means to start solving them. One thing that has been a crucial element in almost every discussion has been around data. And I would like to share a little bit about our work that we do together with the government in Sweden in regards to GovTech and data and infrastructure for data. Because infrastructure from a public perspective in a country needs to be not only the fiber in the ground and the antennas and the hardware. The infrastructure also needs to be the software on top of which a market can appear. And a lot of countries have implemented digital IDs for handling that, which is one type of digital infrastructure. But not many countries have started looking at data as an infrastructure for data, except for Sweden. And so Sweden has been, the last year, started developing an open private-public partnership together. And my company is a private company. I've been working with tech for 25 years. We are a part of building this. And we are building it as an open source project, which means that it's very easy for you to leapfrog and just start from and collaborate on this infrastructure that we have already developed. And the idea is put the human in center of for the individual's data, and the individual can then share specific keys to specific companies and innovators that can look at the data and do all sorts of analysis and innovations and job creation on top of the data. Because we feel that it shouldn't be an option between privacy and innovation. We feel that there needs to be something else. And Mr. Jack Ma yesterday was sharing his views from his perspective that Europe is worrying too much about these questions. And I disagree. I think we should worry a lot on these questions, because the way that the current mode of operation for a lot of countries and regions and companies is that they try to lock in this data. And, but as we all know by now, data is currency. So we are buying products cheaper by also letting them use our data. Which means that we also lock our data in different platforms. So I think that it's very crucial for a country that is not right now have the ability to leapfrog to the next generation, use tech in a new way. to start collaborating between Sweden and Nigeria on these topics. So I'm really happy to be here and be able to share with you a little bit about our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen. That was really interesting to hear. Do we have any questions? Are we taking any questions? Or I will just let Michael from MasterCard give us some final thoughts. I'll give you two.
Sorry. My question is it possible to kind of do what Sweden did and maybe have one of these some of these phone carriers donate maybe smartphones to all Nigerians that can't afford it? And then also
Let's
get some of these telcos,
Let's
some of
ask the
these
carriers these
telcos to give some, data. Is that possible?
Throw it out there. Who are we asking this question to?
I don't know. Anybody? Anyone think
We
that's
should
possible?
keep this on record and make sure that we ask the
I'm just
question to the
wondering.
right people.
I think that it's important to understand the intention of this project in the 90s was one. So the intention was to give equal access to technology. But the effect of it is, as Michael was telling, the effect of it was educational. So if you look at it from that perspective, how can you educate millions of people at the same time? And how can we do that as effectively as possible? Now it was, by chance this happened to us in Sweden, but I think we can design an educational system where we educate the youth, as we have previously heard from the Honorable Minister of Education. That's one of the ways to start looking at educational for the youth. I think that's a super good way of doing it.
I love that idea, and I think that we should really explore that more. I mean, how can we use mobile to penetrate even further? I think Mrs. Owais had mentioned when she was on the panel, she was talking about not being able to reach people who were in remote areas, and even there, they didn't have network. So there's a lot of questions that we need to ask and a lot of conversations that we need to talk about. So she does have a comment or question.
And financially, then many more benefits to them than, worrying about. I get the impression that it's the people that are included, the relatively wealthier, those that live in cities, that worry about hiding, anonymity, tax, all of those issues. But for people who don't exist, because we don't have their identities captured, they need to be brought into the formal economy. So we need to find a balance of how to bring them in without exposing them to the vagaries that exist. Yeah, it's just a comment.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very valid comment. Ibrahima, you had something?
Yeah, I was just going to a follow-up comment and to also what Vivian sort of question about devices. Our sort of research at Facebook actually shows that devices are some of the biggest barriers for connectivity, because what you can find out is a lot of people actually have coverage. Mobile operators have 90% or so 2G coverage, 60-70% in Nigeria at least 3G coverage. So the coverage is there. The devices are some of the biggest issues. There's been, again, progress. I think mobile operators try to do certain things, but they remain expensive. A smartphone is still quite expensive, and it's one of the biggest barriers for people. And you're right to your comment about inclusion. I mean, as long as they can sort of afford these kind of devices, there is no way for them to be online and to be able to take advantage of some of these applications and these services that are coming sort of online.
I think this is how it could work. So we could get, like an Ericsson to give, we could get an Ericsson or something to give smartphones to all of the, people who sign up with their national ID and get their BVN, right? And then open up a bank account at the same time. So you get a free phone if you do all these things, right? Then MTN comes in and they give subsidized credit, but like, you know, so there's a profit share on the credit, and then part of the money that the person has goes to potentially paying back the phones, right? Does that work? No? Okay. I don't know. Let's just throw some stuff out there, and let's like walk away from this conference with actually a solution that we can implement. That's all I'm saying.
I like your thinking.
But
process
could I
there.
address
Let's
the
get,
data question?
Michael's thoughts on that?
Do you mind?
Yes.
Because I think that's a really interesting question. And I think you said the right word there, right? Which is the balance. Like, how do you strike this balance between creating the protections and the support and the knowledge, frankly? I mean, one of the things that we do a lot when we're working with the platforms that I create, right? We're working with base of the pyramid customers. Some of them are illiterate, many of them are semi-literate. So if those of you who have signed up for kind of anything formal in your life, you've probably got a page of T's and C's, right? Terms and conditions. Think through that. Propose like bringing a page of T's and C's to a farmer in a rural place and saying, do you agree to this? Right? That's meaningless. You're not doing anything useful there. That's not informed consent, right? That is just checkbox, you know, CYA, excuse my term there, kind of idea, right? So how do we actually start helping people understand what their data is worth and what we're going to do with their data and how they should think about their data? That knowledge, that capacity building, and that knowledge transfer needs to happen. And there's lots of different ways that we're experimenting with that in terms of videos, in terms of comics that you can use. Like, we need to be creative about that.
So we're now going back to people who can access videos and comics.
You may have to bring them to them. No, that's very fair, but I think the key is that we, as the private sector at least, we are responsible for thinking of creative ways of doing that. I think that's my point. We need to be more creative than we have been historically on how we help people understand that value of their data, and we're trying.
Okay, I see some other hands up in the, several hands up in the audience. Okay, it's your time to ask questions. Please go ahead.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Saleh Abubakar. I'm a system analyst with MSJ Consulting. And I am going to make some brief comments based on what you've been saying and what Hajia just mentioned. Because whenever we are trying to bring solutions to Nigeria, we don't look at how complex the way the country is. And from all the data we've been dishing out, we are talking about just a fraction of Nigerians, about 30%. These are the ones with access to mobile phones that we are talking about, the ones access to internet. There are several people that are living in our villages. These are the people we are talking about. How do we get to them? And these are the people that constitute about 70% of all these people we are talking about. I remember during the voluntary asset and income declaration scheme, the vice president said we have over 70 million active individuals in Nigeria, but there are only 14 of them in our tax net. That means we have about 60 million of them that are not in the tax net, that are not in any database captured. So these are the type of people we should be targeting. So any solution we are providing, we must have to look at the lowest level of technology that these people can access or use. So if our solution is not going to be tailored towards that these people can access or use as technology, then we are only providing the solution to only 30% of Nigerians and those of us that are living in the cities. So if you look at it, most of us, or those that are living in the village, the only technology they have is just the use of some of them. That's not even all. It's the use of their mobile phones. And the only technology applied to it for those without internet access is the use of text messages service, SMS. So if we are bringing out a solution, why don't we have something like, take for example, when they were giving presentation about the cancer, a war on cancer, you understand? It is an app. Now if you have a simple solution with a text message in our local languages, this can go a long way in educating our people in terms of using technology and what have you. So not everything has to be on a smartphone. We have the USSD, we have the SMS that we can use to reach to this number of people, the 70% of people that are there who doesn't live in the cities with us. So if we are trying to bring out any solution, we have to look at these people. They have to be part of the process before we have the solution at the end of it. So if we are not developing any solution that is geared towards finding solution to these people, we are just talking about 30% of our population and not Nigerians. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. My name is Olu Ogunfora. In a multiple role, but that is not my comment or question. I'm really concerned about digital economy without digital ID. Because most of the issues or problems that we're talking about can be solved. Something as basic as registration of birth. Is it possible to have a system across the country that we can track every child that is born in Nigeria with a unique identifier, and we start tracking ID? I mean, when you talked about people in rural areas, there is voters card. I remember MasterCard was pitching this idea of ID card that has a chip. So if you have an ID card that has a chip, it can be a voter's card, it can be your BVN, and with that, once you're able to identify everybody with that digital ID, you can deploy or implement any solutions because you know where everybody is. So why are we not having NIMSI to be part of the conversation of digital economy? That is my question.
Thank you. Can you pass the microphone to the gentleman in front of you as well?
Yeah, hi. My name is Byung-Jun Kim. I'm from the South Korea. I'm part of the Korean International Cooperation Agency project for e-government. Since 2013, Korean government has worked with the Nigerian government to develop the e-government master plan and capacity building program. And today, actually, we launched the officially e-government training center today. But as you know, that 2019 right now, Nigerian government started e-government master plan. I have one question. Actually, many of the audiences mentioned about the potential or opportunity from the private sector to make a development of the digital economy in Nigeria. As you know, that one of the ministry changed the name like a communication and digital economy. What kind of what kind of role to the government side to the development of digital economy and digital government in the future in Nigeria? This is my question.
Thank you for that. I'm just going to take one more question, and then we'll have some responses from the panel.
Good afternoon. My name is Tolu Lokpe Olaronde. I'm the founder of Muslim Communications and Nigerian Women in PR. I want to say that as much as we are preferring solutions to tackle issues around the digital economy, I've not heard anyone really say anything about electricity and its impact to drive a digital economy. If we want to give out phones and there is no way for them to charge it, it really will be useless, right? Everything that we're saying, like this gentleman has said, we're really targeting most of the people only in the cities. We still have communities in Nigeria that have never had electricity. We should probably be looking at alternative power sources, solar, and so we should, every time that we're talking about digital and getting people to come onto tech, we're talking about 4.0, those discussions must be had alongside people who can provide alternative green energy to make sure that digital is sustained and as well giving people power to live.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so I'm just going to allow the panelists to respond to the questions. Vivian wants to start.
I just want to say this. I mean, I think that the reality is how you're going to improve and how countries like Nigeria are going to move forward is by taking solutions and ideas that have worked in the past and in other countries and tailoring it for the Nigerian solution. So in this example, someone talked about power as being a problem. We talk about identification as being a problem, and I feel and of course smartphones being a problem. And I feel like creating these platform services that are tailored to the unique kind of conditions for Africa is the way to go. So I'm leaving this whole conference just inspired to know that yes, these sound huge, but they're really solvable. Get a solar-powered battery pack or something for your phone that can be donated with requirements that you sign up and get a bank account, and all these things I think are quite solvable. So I just hope everyone's inspired to go home and try to crack this.
Thank you, Vivian. Anybody else?
From my perspective, sometimes when we talk about digital transformation, it's kind of held in haze, and it's foggy, and we don't really know what we're talking about. But from my perspective, I've had the honor of being in a lot of boardrooms in almost every industry and starting to see a very clear pattern when all of those are going through digitalization. And it always starts in communication. It's all about the website, it's all about communicating, marketing, campaigns, information, and all of that. And then it's moving into optimization, automation, where it's about creating more efficient tools, more back office solutions, creating cost efficiency, turning papers into PDFs, and all of that. But after that, we're moving into the transformative era, when we're really starting to challenge the organization's role in the ecosystem and becoming something else. I think that most governments right now are in optimization. They kind of just recently left interfaces and now moving in to make things more efficient. And in that case, there's a lot of case studies of those things. That has been done before in almost every industry. So don't just look at other governments, look at other industries, how they've been doing that. And also for the transformative role, look at the ecosystem. This is not being done project by project. This is a system of different pieces operating together. And in the same way that we build the ecosystem of the startup scene in Stockholm, we're now seeing the ecosystem of GovTech starting to appear. With Hack of Sweden, with one very specific piece, but we're also seeing a project like Comet, for instance, which is a SWAT team of lawyers attacking rules that are hindering transformation. So they are speeding up the process of changing regulations that are in the way. So these different pieces are being formed right now into increase that transformative era. It's a pattern that's been done before, and it's possible to look at. And once again, I would definitely say that it's mainly about a culture. It's when we start to realize that we are leaving one era and going into another era, we realize that we can't solve the same the new problems with the old methods. We need to reinvent how we do things, and that includes the governmental transformation itself. And that's a big leap that demands courage, but also a lot of speed.
Thank you for that. And I think that on that note, I'm going to say thank you to all the panelists, Michael, Vivian, Ibrahima, Carolina,
and Christian.
Thank you so much for your time. Can you please give them a hand around?
Please stay where you are for a minute. Just a couple of quick announcements. Someone left their glasses on a table. If it's yours or you know whose it is, please do see me and collect it from me. Is it yours?
It's Larry's.
Huh? It's Larry's? Let him come and beg for it. Okay. The reason why I've asked you to stay on is because we want to thank all of us for coming, and to do that we are privileged to have the acting DG of the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations, Mr. Victor Leilman. He will just come and thank us all, And then I'd like, as soon as it's done, and I hope he's only going to say 2 words, which is thank you. We're then going to have, we're going to invite everybody that has spoken today to come onto the stage for a group photograph. Acting DG.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, let me pick that. Thank you. I have a long sight, short sight, but I can see very closely. I can see the paper, I can see every other thing close beside in front of me. So thank you for asking us to do a vote of thanks. But before we do that, I would like to just say a couple of things about what my office do. My office is called the Nigerian Office for Trade Negotiations. We are the lead agency that manages and lead and coordinate Nigeria's trade negotiations, all trade negotiations, including WTO negotiations, as well as the current African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement negotiation that is currently going on. I would also, I think you should know about the AFCFTA, what it's about, and how you can take advantage of the AFCFTA. We've concluded the first phase of the AFCFTA. It's a market size of 1.2 billion people, and 2.5 to 3 trillion USD GDP, and 4 trillion spending as well as investment, estimated. And with a level of ambition to liberalize non-sensitive products, I wouldn't go into that because those are a bit technical, to liberalize 90% of non-sensitive products between a period of 10 years, and then the sensitive and the exclusion between the period of 13 years, 10 plus 3 years. And so we have concluded negotiations on the first phase. It has the main framework agreement, it has the protocol in goods and the protocol in services, as well as the protocol on the procedure and on dispute settlement. And so that's what we've just concluded that. And so what we are now thinking of doing, which I mentioned yesterday briefly, is to include the protocol on e-commerce. Because we are going into the second phase of the negotiations in January 2020. We have the competition policy, we have investment cooperation, and we also have the intellectual property rights, which are yet to be negotiated. That's what we have the second phase. And so I have spoken to my South African counterparts, as well as Kenyan and Uganda and Egyptians, that we need to include the protocol on e-commerce so that we can have a seamless regulatory policy and legal framework that allows us to sit down and look at issues such as localization of data, as well as cybersecurity, as well as geo-blocking issues, and cross-border flow of information, and of course, the issue of security of information and protection of data, which I think Facebook needs to do more on protection and security of data, without prejudice, my brother. So that's what we've done, and I hope that we're going to have a chance to talk about that in January 2020. And also, so just very briefly, sorry to take your time some more, just so very briefly, the implementation phase of the AFCFTA takes effect in July 2020. But specifically on the 1st of July 2020. So we'll start implementation. And someone said something about the free movement of persons, visa on arrival. The government of Nigeria introduced that to complement the AFCFTA implementation. And we hope that other African countries would follow suit. And that's also in consonance with the protocol on the free movement of persons. Thank you, my brother. So that's all I can say. So I'm going to the vote of thanks, which is a very difficult one, really, because you can never thank everybody, you know. But I'll try to at least thank to the extent that I can. So first of all, we would like to thank the Honorable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, His Excellency Otumba Niyi Adebayo, who is our host. And we would also like to thank Dr. Issa Pantami, the Honorable Minister of Communications and Digital Economy. And we would also like to thank the Federal Minister of Science and Technology, Dr. Ogbonnaya Onu. We would also like to thank the Minister of Youth and Sports, Mrs. Sunday Dare. And then we look at our partners, but you know, I hope you funded this very well, otherwise I wouldn't thank you. All right, so we thank MasterCard. MasterCard for sponsoring this event, and we hope they would also partner more with organizers of this event in the future. And we also want to thank Facebook, and we want to thank, excuse me if I don't pronounce this properly, we want to thank Sweden Severage. And we want to thank, an embassy of Sweden, Abuja. We want to thank Swedish Institute. And we would also like to thank the Bank of Industry. And we would also like to thank the Central Bank of Nigeria. And we would like to thank Foresight Innovation Consulting, who are the organizers of this event. Particularly the lead organizer, actually, Mr. Lanre, my very good friend. Would also like to thank Intermac. And we would like to thank Silky Creations. This is tricky. He's a website developer. So if you want very good website, go to him. Go to Silky Creations. and then lastly, we would like to thank Business Day. And most importantly, as you know, Nigeria is a very religious society. Most importantly, we would like to thank God. So thank you, everybody. And sorry, before I forget, we want to also thank everybody that attended this event, leveraging the digital economy for trade and investment. It's very important. And we also believe that AFCFTA will facilitate services trade even more. And Nigeria needs to take advantage of that 1.2 billion people, particularly when you look at the trade share per capita. I think that's important. And we need to ensure that we trade with ourselves across Africa electronically. That's important. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you so much. Just to close, yesterday I made a mistake a couple of times in naming one of the sponsors, MasterCard. I'd like to make amends and to present MasterCard with this book. It was written by my colleague in the office, and it's called Access for All, Building Inclusive Economic Systems. And that is precisely what we've been discussing today. I'd like a representative of MasterCard to please collect this as atonement for my sins of yesterday. Okay, and if you spoke this morning, please come up to the stage and let's take a group photograph. Huh? And yesterday, if you spoke at this event at all, please do come up for a group photograph. And don't forget that there's dinner at 7 o'clock this evening, and we're expecting His Excellency, the Vice President of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, and the dinner is going to be here at the banquet hall of State House, 7 o'clock. Please endeavor to attend. I need somebody I'm tall enough to stand behind. You're blocking Please do help yourself to lunch. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you.